Angela Janke, speech number 2. July 4th, 2011. Where were you? If you were like all the millions of Americans, you were probably with your family and your friends, having a barbecue at the lake, eating watermelon, watching the kids run, attending a parade. Maybe you were in the parade. Who knows? But as the day turned to night, you probably gathered with these same family and friends, pulled your chairs up, sat down, and watched as our night sky lit up. Beautiful, bold colors, reds, whites, blues, greens, palm trees, hearts, waterfalls, whatever it might have been. You sat and watched as we celebrated America's independence. But what happened? How did we get this independence? I'm going to tell you. Back in the mid-1700s, the 13 colonies of the Americas were under the British crown. King George was the king back then. King George back then put laws on the 13 colonies that restricted the lands. How's that? So in 1774, the delegates formed a group called the First Continental Congress and sat down and wrote letters to the king protesting these laws. They sent letters, they sent more letters, no response. Never a response. It seemed as if their protests fell on deaf ears. So in 1776, another group formed called the Second Continental Congress that decided that as a rebellion to the king, they were going to declare their independence from the British crown. So this Second Continental Congress appointed 5 men called the Committee of 5 to draft a document that was going to declare independence from the British crown. The 5 gentlemen chosen were Ben Franklin, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, Roger Sherman, and Robert Livingston. Thomas Jefferson was tasked with writing the document. We know who John Adams is, we know who Thomas Jefferson is, we know who Ben Franklin is, but who are these other 2 gentlemen? Well, they were representatives. Sherman represented Connecticut, and Livingston represented New York. But why was Jefferson chosen to write? Why him? Well, first of all, he was from Virginia, and Virginia back then was kind of the leader of the colonies. He was also nominated by John Adams, and Congress voted him in because he was known for his love of literature and his love of composition. Congress also knew him that while a quiet member of Congress, he was also prompt, decisive, explicit, and very upfront. So he was tasked with this. So Jefferson took this task to heart, and he wanted to find a place where he could be secluded. He wanted to be away from the sounds of the city. So he set out to find a place where he could do this. On the outskirts of town, a bricklayer named Jacob Graff, who had just built a home. Jacob Graff built this home, and it was set right on the outskirts, and so Jefferson went in and he rented the entire 2nd floor. He brought his staff with him and all of his servants, and he set about to write this document. So Jefferson took from June 11th to June 28th to draft this document. On June 28th, the Committee of 5 took this document to Congress and presented it to them. Congress made 86 revisions to this document, thus eliminating about a 1/4 of it. This here is what is the first page of the document that they made revisions to. It shows what they struck, and it shows what they added to this document. On June 1st, the first vote was put to the colonies on whether or not they approved this. New York abstained. South Carolina and Pennsylvania didn't like it. They didn't approve it. So they put it to another vote on July 2nd. New York voted in, South Carolina and Pennsylvania. Everyone voted unanimous. The importance of this united front was because any type of rebellion towards the king was considered treason. Treason back then was punishable by hanging. Every one of these members would have been hung if one of them didn't agree to it. So all of them had to agree, all of them had to be united in our independence. So, 235 years ago, on July 4th, 1776, in the Pennsylvania State House, which is now known as Independence Hall, our Declaration of Independence was approved. The first signers were John Hancock, who was the President of Congress, and Charles Thompson, who was the Secretary of Congress. They sent this document to be copied. They made 200 copies called Dunlap broadsides. In modern day, a Dunlap broadside would be considered about poster size. They took these 200 documents, sent them to each of the 13 colonies to be read out loud to the people, so that everyone knew of our independence and what the Americas were about now. The first public reading of this document was done on July 8th in Philadelphia. Of those 200 Dunlap broadsides, 24 still exist. Two are known to be over in a British repository, although to date, no one knows if the king ever saw that document. So why did Hancock sign so big? We all know that John Hancock was the biggest signer of the document. Why did he sign so big? It's rumored that he did it because so King George could see it. Others say he did it because he was a president of Congress. Nobody knows. Nobody knows for sure why he did that. There's 56 signers to the Declaration of Independence. The youngest signer was Edward Rutledge, who represented South Carolina. He was a 26-year-old delegate, and a bit of trivia is that Rutledge didn't approve the Declaration of Independence, but he went with it just to present a united front. The oldest signer was Benjamin Franklin, who was 70 years old. The Commonwealth, or the colony, with the most signers was the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So our Declaration of Independence was done. The Americas were freed from the British reign. It's our birth certificate. It's America's birth certificate, and our freedom that we celebrate comes from this document. This document is also the foundation of our Constitution, our Emancipation Proclamation, and the Bill of Rights. So next year when you gather again, think about the forefathers and what they did, and what they allowed, what the lengths that they went to so that we could be called the land